Hi, my name is Sanjay Naraja. I'm Quality Director and Consultant at Inglasia Pharma Solutions. You're going to be audited, or in other words, you're going to be inspected by a regulatory authority. This training is going to be talking about inspection readiness. The key to all this, right from the beginning, through it all, right till the end, keep calm. I'll be emphasizing this point throughout the training, just to remind you that at any point, you've got to keep yourself calm. Inspection readiness agenda. The topics we'll be covering today are as follows. What is an inspection? Do I need to be involved in it? What do I need to do to prepare? What could I expect on the inspection day? What can and can't I do during the inspection? What happens next? What is an inspection? Well, it's an independent assessment of your organization. It's a fresh pair of eyes looking as a snapshot of what you're doing to comply with the regulations, whatever that may be, whether that be good manufacturing practices, good distribution practices, good clinical practices, good pharmacovigilance practices. It could be any of these. The regulatory inspector is coming to assess and see whether you're meeting the standards of what is expected. Regulatory compliance. The inspectors will be on site assessing whether you're meeting the standards that apply to you in your country. If you're in the US, FDA, if you're in the UK, MHRA, in Europe, EMA, and so on. And they will be assessing whether you comply to the standards that they set out in the respective country. It's also verifying that the documentation you present on the day of the inspection is compliant, is complete, and is accurate in representing the activities that are performed within your organization. The inspectors are there to not only find things that are not necessarily going that well, they're also there to find things that are going well and things that could be a serious issue in terms of risk to patient or product. So really they're there as an outside pair of eyes to look into your organization and give you something in terms of insight that maybe you within your organization have not considered. We have to consider inspections as an opportunity to identify gaps and areas for improvements in the things that we do, because we are not experts in everything, and there are gaps in our knowledge. And certainly in the organization, there will be gaps, and there always is, as I've seen in the numerous companies that I've audited. And it's just really someone from outside coming to help you to find those and help you put in place improvements. Remember, inspections are there to help you. This is all really to help you be calm at all times. See this as a positive and not as a fault-finding exercise where fingers are going to be pointed at people, because that's not the outcome that's expected out of these inspections. It's about finding improvements that can be made. Do I need to be involved in this inspection? You certainly do. The entire organization needs to be inspection ready. Everyone in the organization needs to be informed as soon as the inspector has notified the point of contact that they will be inspecting the site, whether that be in a week's time, in a month's time, in 2 months' time. As soon as you know it, let the organization know that you're going to be inspected so that everyone is inspection ready. Now, not everyone needs to be put in front of the inspector. So you'll be pleased to hear that it's not everyone that needs to be there on the day of the inspection in front of the inspector. There will be someone certainly that needs to be the point of contact with the inspectorate. That is the one that coordinates internally within the organization to make sure that all departments, personnel, are all prepared and ready to receive the inspection. So there needs to be someone that coordinates this within your organization. So that person certainly will be the one that is there throughout the inspection with the inspector. And they will also work with the departments and the line managers to identify who would be the best people to front the auditor or be there to support on the day of the audit. Make sure that the subject matter experts are carefully selected. And this is how you find people who are very familiar with the processes, who in some ways know it inside out, or know it very well, are the ones that you should select to be supporting and facing the inspector if required. We'll touch on that a bit more as we go through the training. And everyone else that is considered to not need to participate on the day or days of inspection, they should certainly be there to support. They should be aware that this inspection taking place and over how many days, and they should be always contactable, and also know that they need to be mindful that an inspection is happening, and they need to be careful in how they conduct themselves during the inspection. I'll touch on that in a little bit more detail further on in the training. What do I need to do to prepare? Well, first thing really is to keep calm. Right from the beginning and throughout the preparation and readiness and on the day of inspection, you need to keep calm, because if you're not calm, you will actually trip yourself up. And what we're going to cover in this training is to give you some tips and ideas on how you could achieve that being calm by preparing yourself. Now, you have to choose the people that will be there on the day of the inspection and supporting with getting all the documents necessary and looking at areas where there might be issues that could be identified, and working with those people to try and get those resolved prior to the inspection. So choosing the right people is key to all of this. Know the regulations under which you will be inspected. Make sure that you're very familiar with what that is and what the expectations are. And this tool is vital. Have an inspection readiness checklist prepared. Work as a team, identify what you think you need to have on that checklist right at the beginning of inspection readiness, so that you have enough time to go through that list and make sure that all those points have been addressed. Any gaps that you identify are hopefully closed out. So the inspection readiness checklist is a vital document that needs to be there right from the beginning. So please prepare one of these. If you'd like to know more about what you typically have in the inspection readiness checklist, I'm happy to go into more detail on that. So please feel free to contact me and I can share more details. Make sure processes are documented. As you go through your checklist, if there are certain things against the regulations that you need to be seeing within your organization, and you look and you find that it's not there, then you know that that needs to be documented in some shape or form. So take that into consideration. Make sure that records are available for the day of the inspection, easily accessible. There's no need to wait for excessive periods of time to receive a document by the inspector. Make sure that it's readily available. And also check that the documents and records and logs are all following the ALCOA plus principles. Make sure that the training records are kept up to date. Personnel that are involved in certain processes firsthand, they really need to have in-depth training. They need to have training that shows that it's not just read and understood. Ideally, on-the-job training where their supervisor has monitored their training and has signed off to say that they're competent in performing their task. Make sure that all these training records for all personnel, especially those that you feel are going to be in front of the inspector or going to be supporting on the day of the inspection, that their training files are certainly kept up to date. I say that the processes that you follow need to be understood inside out. Now, sometimes there could be challenges. People might not necessarily know some of the procedures in that much depth because perhaps it's been a few months since they had to follow the process. So really what I'm trying to get across here is that if there are procedures that are listed in your training matrix or are procedures that you have been trained on in the past, try and make that time to familiarize yourself with those procedures as much as you can. Doesn't have to be word for word, but you know the general flow of that process that's described within the procedure. Because what could happen? You could be asked to go and sit in front of the inspector. The inspector could sit next to you with that procedure and ask you to just talk them through in a sort of a form of summary what is described within that procedure. So you should be able to do that confidently. Also, as part of the checklist, there should be a roll call or a log of personnel that will be there on the day of the inspection and what they will all be doing. There could be the backroom staff. There could be the team that sit there with the inspector on the days, and there could be people that run from the back room to different departments to get documents. So these are the runners. And then you need to have a scribe, someone that scribes the notes on the day of the inspection, taking down everything the inspector discusses and requests. And there's obviously someone that would lead the inspection, host the inspection that needs to be identified right at the beginning of inspection readiness. And it's really working as a team that is the most effective way to be able to get everything in place for the days of the inspection. I've seen organizations where they really work in silos. There is politics that gets in the way and doesn't allow the team to come together and work cohesively. So really try and build that team relationship so that everyone can pull together to make sure that all the requirements of the checklist have been ticked off prior to the inspection date. And as we all know, any play can only be successful once we've rehearsed, and rehearsed. So the more preparation you do, the more practice runs you do, also performing a mock inspection just prior to the real inspection, all helps with getting the personnel, the documentation, all aligned and ready for the actual day of the inspections. And I will keep saying this throughout the training: prepare, prepare, prepare. Because the last thing you want to do is prepare to fail. What could I expect on the inspection day? Again, as we get closer to the inspection day and on the day of the inspection, you got to keep calm. You want to show that to the inspector you are in control of the inspection. You are the master of your processes that are being audited, and you know more about your processes than the inspector does, and you know that for sure. Have that always in the forefront of your head, so that whenever you're asked questions, you are able to answer them with confidence, because you know more than the inspector does about what you do. And when you do that, what you find is that the inspectors start to listen to you and start to take you seriously and respect what you say. So certainly keeping calm will all support with you achieving that desired goal of giving confidence to the inspector that you know your processes very well. On the day of the inspection, you're going to have introductions. The inspector is going to be kind of giving an overview of what they'll be looking at on the day or days of the inspection, and they would expect typically to see a presentation of the organization, fairly brief, does not need to be too lengthy, very concise and very clear about what happens within your business without giving too much detail. Always remember that the presentation sets the scene for the inspector to kick off the inspection and where they will go in terms of what they will look at in the inspection. It's key that when you present, that you present it in a way that you can talk them through areas where you're very confident on. The inspector may want to follow up on previous inspection findings, if applicable. It might be the first inspection because you're getting yourself a GMP license for manufacturing investigational medicinal products. Once the introductions, presentations, and any kind of follow-ups and initial meeting discussions are out the way, the inspectors would typically want to do a tour of the facility. I mean, that could happen in the morning or sometime later in the day, or maybe even another day. It really depends because every inspector is different, and they might have a different way of following the process. I'm just sharing with you what I've seen typically when I've had to face inspectors. During the tour, there will certainly be a lot of questions asked about the material flow, the product flow, the personnel flow, and the HVAC system, the purification water system, the warehouse goods in, material storage, QC check, and then products that are then manufactured and packaged and finally released and stored in a GDP storage area for the released medicinal products. They could ask questions around the storage to GDP standards in that space. So they will walk through the entire facility. If this is a general overview audit, if it's an inspection that's looking at a specific area where they might have concerns, then it could very much focus on that particular area of your organization. For example, if it's to do with the isolator unit and there's been some integrity issues, there could be a lot of focus around that and the associated documentation. There will certainly be lots of questioning of the subject matter experts in terms of any concerns they might have, and they'll want to understand how that's controlled, and they will look at documentation to support what the SME is trying to explain. So really, when you do explain things, make sure that they are pretty much aligned with what your procedures and records and logs have within them, so that it goes through seamlessly. The inspectors will certainly be looking at lots of documentation after they've done a tour of the facilities and obviously viewing the processes. There will be a lot of documentation reviews. Again, looking at documentation against the ALCOA principles. I certainly know in the US it's very much documentation heavy in terms of inspections, whereas in Europe and other parts of the world it tends to be more a view of the process through the walk around of the facility, and then sampling documentation after having done a walkthrough of that facility. So US is FDA very much documentation focused, and certainly looking for any kind of fraudulent activities or any kind of activities where it's shown that the personnel in the organization haven't been following good documentation practices. So in this space, certainly when you're doing a checklist, make sure that when you're checking your documents and records that you check them against the principles of ALCOA and that they are adhering to those standards. And at the end of the inspection, whether it be a 1 day or a number of days of inspection, the inspector will then close out on the audit and provide a feedback on what they had seen. It would be typically what are good practices that they've noted through the inspection, as well as, and what they're there mainly for is to highlight areas where improvements can be made. They will also, at the closeout of the audit, the inspection, sorry, they will highlight what are the areas that improvement will be needed, and also the process for responding to those observations that they had identified. What can I do during the inspection? So we've discussed about the inspection day or days and how they will typically flow. Now, on this slide, we're going to be talking about what you must do to prepare yourself more as a person, how you'd come across, and best practices of behaviors around inspectors. You certainly need to know your stuff, which SOPs and working instructions apply to the work that you do. Your training file is up to date. You need to make sure that you're confident, calm, and relaxed pre, during the inspection at all times. And the way you achieve this is by always telling yourself that the inspection is just there to help us make more improvements to our processes. Your checklist is there to prepare you to see that everything is available and is in compliance with what the regulations expect in that particular area. And also the checklist helps you find the gaps prior to the inspection. And if there is any gaps, you put in a plan on how you're going to remediate those issues prior to the inspection. Because last thing you want is the inspector to come and find that there's something there that you didn't know about. You'd rather be knowing of it before the inspector finds it. And even if they do find something, you can then say to the inspector, actually, I do know about this. We do know that there's an issue in this area, and we've done a risk assessment, and we've justified what are the risks around this particular process, and what are the mitigating actions we're going to take for this, and the timelines. When you present something like that to the inspector, certainly it will make you feel a lot calmer and confident that you're in control of the situation. And the inspector will also see that you have things under control. Always be polite, never be aggressive. The inspector could have had a bad day. They could be there not just in a professional way, but also coming with a lot of burden in their mind. And that could, in some ways, poison the environment. And it's your job as a host, as an auditee, to kind of diffuse that. Because I've seen all different types of inspectors. Some of them are quite understanding, quite open, quite friendly, and probably have had a good day, and a lot more politer. However, there are some that are kind of the other extreme, And it certainly doesn't help if we kind of add to that burden to that inspector, because they will really start to make life difficult for you. And also being helpful goes a long way. When we take control of the situation and be confident and say, you know, how can I help you here? Can I help you to understand this particular process a little bit better? Um, I can get some input from another SME, or I can give you some more clarification on that. So always try and show that you're helpful, because then the inspector will also see that you really want them to get it. You really want them to understand what you're doing and why you're doing what you do, and how you've kind of mitigated any risks around that particular process. So really take charge of that situation so that the inspector feels like they're in safe hands in some ways. And remember, be truthful. Answer questions truthfully and only the questions asked. I'm kind of pausing there for a minute, because I really want you to take that in, because you really need to think that if you're not truthful, you will be tripping yourself up, because you just put a lie on the ground and you're going to go walking around that and it's going to trip you over. Remember, if something's not right and you kind of sense it as well, then you have to say it. I know it's painful at the time. I know it can sort of bring thoughts of what's everyone else going to say in the organization. But you got to realize that ultimately what you're doing here is to make sure that the patient life is looked after. So if we get the inspectors to help us to kind of put these things right, then we know that we can do a better job moving forward. Whatever said and done, preparation. If you prepare, you certainly will become calmer and you become more confident, and you'll be certainly truthful to any questions asked by the inspector. Act professionally at all times, because this is a work environment. You are here to successfully get your organization through the inspection. So be professional at all times. Even if the inspector is not, that doesn't excuse you from being unprofessional. So what are the do's and don'ts on the days of the inspection? The inspector asks you a question. If you know that answer 100%, then great. If you have a doubt, if you're 99%, then explain that to the inspector that you're not sure about this, but I will find out. And if you lie, if you're not truthful, then it all ends in tears. You will just be digging a bigger and bigger hole for yourself and the organization. Never get aggressive or try and be cleverer than the inspector. Always be respectful. Remember, you're trying to teach them about what you do. As a teacher, you're not there to show that you're clever, that you're smarter. You're there to impart knowledge of what you do in your organization. So try and get it across to them in a helpful manner that you feel is the best way for them to understand what you're trying to get across. It is also frustrating for the inspector, because they might have never been at your site. They might have never known what you do exactly and how you do it. And they're trying to get their head around it. So be patient with them and try and help them to better understand your processes within your organization. Again, when you're calm, confident, you certainly will find that these issues of fidgeting, shifting around and touching your face, these sort of things, you will go away, will fall by the wayside. And remember that inspectors also do look for these body language indicators, where they could see that someone is not really confident in what they're talking to me about. Remember that. Certainly the inspectors do look out for body language, and especially the experienced ones. And the only way that you can get around this issue is be confident, be calm, and be able to only the truth. If there are things you're not sure about, just confess to it and say that you can find out and let them know. And also, one of the techniques that they say about preparation for inspection is that inspectors could ask closed or open questions. Closed questions are, do you have an SOP for this process? And your answer for that closed question is yes or no. And then they could ask, can you talk me through that process that you described in that procedure? And that's an open question. So for that, be clear and concise and only give them very high level overview of that particular process when you summarize it to the inspector. The inspector will just sit there and listen and listen, and don't try to fill the silence. Remember, your answers must be short and concise as much as possible. And let the inspector then ask for anything further if they need to. And again, when they do, be short and concise for the open questions, and the closed questions, just give them one answer. That's it. One short answer. During the inspection, make sure that all staff or personnel are aware of this inspection happening. Make sure that they are professional as they walk through the company. Make sure that they're not talking about the inspection or about the inspectors, certainly not about the inspectors, because that will certainly end up in tears as well. They all have to be professional on the days of the inspection and be polite and helpful wherever they need to be. Some inspections can go on for a number of days, even maybe 1 or 2 weeks. And really, as the inspection host and the team that are supporting the inspection, you got to hang in there, support each other, and work as a team, and you will get through it. You just have to take each day as it comes and not think of it as daunting days of inspection. Each day is a new day, and be fresh at the beginning of the day, and at the end of the day, you just go home, relax, and then come in the next day fresh. Don't think that yesterday's challenges to the following day's challenges, because again, that will really affect your calmness and your focus and your commitment to be consistent in how you come across during the days of the inspection. And what happens next? Once the inspection is out of the way, we can all breathe a sigh of relief. Well, the inspector will write to you stating the deficiencies that they noted on the day or days of inspection. Typically in Europe and other parts of the world, the observations are sort of a critical, which is something where it's had or is going to have an imminent impact on patient safety or product quality. Major is where something typically it's a regulatory non-compliance, and we carry on this way, it's going to have an impact on the patient safety. So it needs to be addressed fairly soon. And minor deficiencies are where there are departures from best practices, which they would recommend from their experience of having inspected many organizations. We will share some suggestions on how some of these minor processes could be improved. They will also give you an indication of timelines for responding to the deficiencies. Once they've issued that letter to you, they will have on the letter saying that they would expect you to typically respond back within 30 days is sort of the common turnaround timeline for receiving your responses to the inspector's observations. Now, remember, this is just a general overview. If it's critical, then certainly their report will be out to you very quickly, and they would also expect you to respond back very quickly with your sort of mitigation plan for that critical observation. They will expect you to give a formal written response with your plan to resolve those issues that they had identified, and also with timelines of when you'd expect to get that completed by. So be realistic on your timelines. Make sure that they are achievable, and also if it is, for example, 6 months to get it resolved, then give your explanation in that response on why it will take that sort of time, so that they could kind of empathize with you somehow if you're able to give a rationale for that. Once they receive your response, they will then confirm that the inspection is now closed on receipt of a satisfactory response and evidence of the closure of deficiencies. There will be certainly like criticals where they would expect to see proof of that deficiency being closed out, and that might also involve another visit to the site to see that issue has been physically closed out as well, if that is the case. Remember, inspectors are knowledgeable human beings. They wouldn't be an inspector if they haven't been doing that sort of work for years, or having worked in that space for a number of years for that particular process that they come to inspect. They also do have a tough job to do. They have a short period of time on your site. They might never have been on your site before, and they really have to get it. They really have to understand what's going on. It could be a complex operation. There could be multiple dosage forms being manufactured in your facility. So it's a real challenge for them. So be empathetic, understanding, and be supportive to take them through those days of the inspection. They're there to interrogate documents, systems, and people. So remember that they've got to do that. They will have a thorough knowledge of the principles of ALCOA as they review documentations. They will look at your electronic systems and paper-based systems to see how well they're controlled. Are they validated if they're electronic? And they will want to check some documentations on validation. And also with personnel, they'll want to see, how they come across, how well are they trained, and how is training documented. So these are all the things that inspectors would say on to a greater or lesser extent during the days or day of inspection. And for you, you need to be prepared. So prepare, be calm, know your job. Represent the company in the best way possible. Be professional, be polite, and be helpful. And this last point is for everyone in the organization, is to be professional at all times. Because you never know, at any point the inspector could walk out of the room, go into a corridor, and they could see a group of people just mocking the inspector that's there for those inspections. So everyone really needs to be aligned, work as a team, and be professional at all times. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that training on inspection readiness. I hope it gave you a bit of an overview of things that you need to do in preparation for regulatory authority inspection. If you have any questions, then I'll be happy to receive them. You can contact me. You got my email address on this slide, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.